Welcome again to the Most Important Skill in Life podcast. I'm your host, Travis Daigle, and this is episode 10, Every Rep Counts. Back on July 26, 2024, I wrote an article entitled Every Rep Counts. And because this article is short, I'm going to go ahead and read it to you all, and then I'll go deeper with the podcast. One of the biggest misconceptions I battle in my life is the notion that physical training has to be an all or nothing endeavor. If it was lifting weights, I had to lift weights 6 days a week for at least an hour per day. If it was running, I had to run for an hour every day. If it was martial arts, I had to be able to train 5 days a week. In the past, the immediate urge to get better has often been my worst enemy because the all or nothing mentality that comes with that urge always leads to burnout. For a litany of reasons, this mentality has never produced significant gains in physical ability, which of course is the primary point of these endeavors. Today, my mentality has shifted. Whenever I meet a potential new member at the MMA gym where I've been training for over 3 years, one of the pieces of advice I am always giving, whether young or old, is every rep counts. I give people a spiel that sounds something like this. I'm going to tell you something you're not going to, let me start over again. I'm going to tell you something and you're not going to listen to me, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Even if you only make it to class once a week, at the end of the year, you've come to the gym 52 times. Each time you will be fully recovered from the last workout, and that initial pace leaves you plenty of room and energy to manage all the responsibilities you have outside of the gym, like work, family, etc. Also, it gives you time to start making adjustments in your diet that will support your efforts. Even if it's just once a week, that time and those reps count. They add up. They keep you on the path to getting better. Most people will understand my advice, but they'll go all or nothing instead. Why? Martial arts training can be addictive. You train with people who are incredibly skilled, and you want to improve quickly because you're tired of getting your ass kicked. So what do people do? They come 4 to 5 times a week when they first start training. Some people, sometimes twice a day. In that time, they may get injured and their diet may actually get worse. Eventually, they stop training and I don't see them for months sometimes. Then, when they come back, it's almost like starting from scratch, if they come back at all. I get it. I did the same thing while I was in the Army. While stationed in North Carolina going through the Special Forces qualification course, I got into boxing at a local gym. I thought I had to be able to train 4 to 5 days a week or it wasn't worth the effort. I tried to get in daily, Monday through Friday, on top of my military training. I lasted 2 weeks and I was done. My body and mind were worn out. Had I understood then what I understand now and committed to going once a week, my boxing skills would be otherworldly by now. That was 15 years ago in 2009. Once a week for 15 years with 8 weeks off per year comes out to 660 training sessions. Am I going to be vastly improved after 660 training sessions? My gut feeling says yes. I made the same mistake with both CrossFit and MMA after I left the military. Now, I'm constantly reminding myself that improving in martial arts is a lifelong process. Part of accelerating that process is learning to avoid burnout and being patient with my rate of improvement. We should extrapolate this concept to any part of life we are trying to improve. I once heard someone say that we overestimate what we can do in a year and we underestimate what we can do in a decade. We have to understand that our capacities are limited. Therefore, changes we want to initiate have to be taken incrementally. And every one of those small steps taken with intention counts. So again, folks, the title of that article, the title of this podcast is Every Rep Counts. I wrote that on July 26, 2024. And As you just heard, one of my big problems when I first started working out as a young man is I had this somewhere I got in my mind, and I think to a degree this is understandable, because I was 10 years old when I first started working out. I thought the more I worked, the harder I worked, the sooner my body would change. As I've said many times, I was obese growing up as a kid. I started working out at 10 years old. At the time, I weighed 180 pounds, was really overweight, and compared to the other kids, athletically very slow and unable to compete. And I really wanted to compete and wanted to participate in sports. So the first step in that process for me was losing weight. And of course, just being a kid and not knowing anything, it was 1992 at the time. I just figured if I work out harder, I'll get stronger faster, I'll lose weight faster. And of course, that was not the case. And the big thing that I didn't understand is the importance of being strict about your recuperation and your recovery, like you are strict about showing up to do the workout, whatever workout protocol you're following. And even to go further, the discipline to limit yourself in your workouts it's just something I didn't understand back then. And I applied that mentality to everything. And to an extent, you know, I could look back on this with regret and say, oh man, I wish I could get those years back. I would do things differently, but obviously I can't get them back. But the other thing is by pushing myself so hard, because I did the same thing with academics. I did the same thing with athletics. I had this mentality of go as hard as humanly possible, and we'll sleep when we die, kind of. But the problem with that is it burns you out. On the flip side, though, it does make you tough. And so going forward in the future and just my life as an adult, that mentality of pushing myself so hard when I was younger has made me really good at showing up. But of course, the problem, and I'm just looking at my notes here, folks, the problem is you also have to pay attention to the results that you're getting. And I think for a long time, and I talk about stories, right? I had this story built up in my head that, okay, the harder you work physically, the sooner results will come. And I stuck with that story for so long, probably until after I left the military. And sort of that first couple years when I left the military, when I was doing CrossFit, I'm in my early 30s, 31, 32, and I'm trying to compete in local CrossFit competitions, and I'm trying to train mixed martial arts at the time. And though I did get stronger, probably because I was the lifts and the movements that I were doing were novel to my body at the time. I did see some strength gains, did see some physiological changes in my body. I just couldn't keep up with that work rate anymore. And, my body started to tell me, like, I started having issues sleeping, issues with digestion, all sorts of things. And I just realized like that I was just doing too much and my body couldn't recover. And this kind of leads into the advice that I would, when I was a trainer at a gym during that time frame where I was doing CrossFit and MMA. This was like in between 2012 and 2014. And when I was, even back then when I was a coach, and today as a member at an MMA gym, whenever I see new people come in, whether it's you're doing CrossFit, martial arts, whatever the case may be, I'm always telling people, like, it's because usually you're in your 30s, 40s, you're trying to get in shape again. Maybe you saw somebody doing this activity somewhere, or somebody told you about it and they're having results and they're having a good time with this new community of people that they found. And so you want to dive in. And I've told people so many times, like, you're an adult now, you have lots of the responsibilities of adults. I'm fortunate in a sense that I don't have kids. Me and my wife want kids one day, but right now we don't have them. And there's a lot of freedom that I have in my time and energy because of that. But a lot of people my age do have kids, 2, 3, 4 kids. And I'll see people come in and they're trying to come in every day because it is addictive and you want to get better. But it wears your body down if you come in every day. And so I tell people all the time, if you come once a week, that adds up. And guess what happens when you come once a week? Your body has plenty of time to recuperate before the next session so that you come in each time fresh, your body fully recovered, ready to train, ready to pay attention, and you're excited to come to the gym. It is such a bad feeling when you get stale because you're training too much and the gym just becomes a job. It just becomes another job. You got your daytime job during the day that pays the bills, and now you're going to your next job, which is completing the workout. And there's a time for that kind of discipline and soldiering forward. But when we're trying to elicit physiological change in our bodies, we need long periods of time with a lot of consistency. And too often in my own training, and too often I see new people coming into martial arts or getting into something like CrossFit, and people want to get better. That desire to improve is so high that sometimes we are not logically looking at the outcomes of what we're doing and not seeing like, oh, I'm exhausted. Oh, I'm not sleeping well. Oh, I'm craving a lot more processed carbs and sugar because I'm doing all this damn work and running my body into the ground. And so, and in the article, I use an example, and I do think about this a lot. I got into boxing when I was in North Carolina going through the Special Forces qualification course there. And there was a local boxing gym, and I started attending, and I was trying to go every day. I was trying to go Monday through Friday. I was trying to get, in the article I write 4 to 5 times a week, but it might have been like, I might have been trying to go Monday, Wednesday, Friday or something like that. But I was trying to be there as frequently as I could. I certainly didn't have this mentality of 1 time a week. And man, like I said, that was in 2009. It's 2025 when I'm recording this. It's January 2025. And man, I have been doing boxing at my current gym, once a week for probably like the last year. And I have come leaps and bounds from where I was when I started that process. And I think about it now like, man, had you just committed to once a week back then and just stayed with it, like I said, otherworldly, I'd be so good by now. Because again, 660 training sessions over 15 years. Am I going to get better? You damn right I'm going to get better. So too often we're so in a hurry to get better, and we're so impatient about progress. And we have this idea in our mind, if I just do more, then I'll get there faster. And nothing could be further from the truth. Your body has to recover, work and rest. You have to find a balance. And so I think that the reason this is becoming so interesting to me as an idea as of late is because I think it can be applied to a lot of different things. And a perfect example is saving money. And it's so unfortunate that we don't teach this in our country, and it's not like mandatory that all young people have this understanding and then be forced. I say forced. You don't want to force people, but like everybody should understand what an IRA, Roth IRA is. And everybody should explicitly understand when they are in high school and should have to review annually what it means to put away 10% of your income. Every dime you make, you put away a penny, right? Like, what does it mean to put away 10% of your income over the next 40 years? So if a kid gets a job at 16 years old, automatically a Roth IRA should be opened in their name, and there should be an explicit statement of you need to start moving 10% of every paycheck you make for the next 40 years into this account, into the S&P 500, and let it ride. And I mean, you would make, if you start working at 15, that means by 55, you've got 40 years of investing 10% of every dollar you make. I mean, we'd be a country of millionaires, and there'd be so much money in cash in the market. All these new businesses would be getting started. I don't know that to be true, right? But like, just think about it. And just the power of showing that. But it's not a get rich quick. right? Like a lot of people are falling for, what do they call them? Not pyramid schemes. I mean, people are falling for those too, but multi-level marketing is a big thing. I remember when I lived in Tacoma, and I used to frequent coffee shops quite a bit to do writing for my blog, etc., work on speeches. And the number, I mean, at least once every 3 months, I would get approached by someone who had a multi-level marketing scheme that they wanted me to be a part of. They were selling products for Amway or some other nutritional supplement company, and they just felt like I would be perfect to sell them to. And what is that? And one of the things that these people who were trying to get me on board with these things, one of the things they would always mention is how the person that got them involved, they're making all this money and they drive this fancy car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's that desire to be able to show, to gain wealth and accumulate wealth fast. But man, I think about it constantly. Like, even in my job as a security guard now, let's say I would have started working as a security guard when I turned 21, and before that, I had a couple jobs. I worked at Sears. I worked at a fast food restaurant. But the power would have been I'm pretty positive I was 16 years old when I first started working at a restaurant. Had I started saving 10% of every dollar that I made from that point forward, we're talking about, I'm 42 now, 420, that would be 26 years of investing. I mean, I can't even imagine how much money I would have in retirement now had I done that back then. And this is just the power of, like, we think it's simple. Oh, putting $1 away regularly isn't going to do anything, right? But every rep counts. Every penny counts. Okay, so like the power of compounding over time with consistent investment strategy, nothing extreme, just showing up consistently, knowing every time you get paid, I'm cutting away 10% and I'm putting it into my retirement. Like, and just setting it and forgetting it, getting into that savings habit. I mean, we'd have a country full of millionaires. But again, everybody wants it right now. And so many of us don't understand the power of small steps accumulated over time. So money is an example. Okay, what's another example? Making content. Every time I have tried to implement like I'm a post every day strategy, or even like I'm gonna make content every week strategy. Every time I've done that, I have burned out and collapsed and ended up hating what I made and deleting it all from the internet. And then I end up starting all over again. And what I've done differently with this endeavor, like I said, this isn't going to be released, I think, until May, maybe June. But I'm recording this in January. Now, why is that? That's because after the last time I shut down a YouTube channel and shut down my presence online, I decided that I needed to approach things in a more sustainable way, which I didn't know what it was initially. Then one day I realized, well, man, why don't you record a bunch of episodes ahead of time? Don't publish anything, just get them recorded, get them uploaded to YouTube, and just keep them private. And then once you feel like you've recorded enough, schedule them out over a long period of time at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of 2025. That way, when I want to take breaks from content, when I want to go do other things and I think about what's happening on the internet, I've created this buffer for myself. And even then, there was the temptation to be like, oh, I recorded 8 episodes, so I'm going to have an episode release every week. And then I said, no, Travis, have it release every other week. Give yourself a big buffer of time. So when I started this year, 2025, I had 8 episodes already pre-recorded, and that went all the way through the end of April because I'm dropping them, I think, on the first and third Friday of every month. And now this is the 10th episode. It's going to go handle the second Friday in May, and this is still January, so I still got that 4-month buffer. And the pace is so much more comfortable for me, and it's a pace I can see sustaining for the long haul. Like, I'm trying to get a full-time slot at my job this year because I know I can handle it. I'm making it to the MMA gym regularly every week because I know I'm not worried about how much content am I generating and what new piece of content am I generating today. I'm just taking a long range strategy because in times past I've gotten so focused on I need to turn this into a viable business. And I still want it to be a viable business. But what I've seen in the stories of every creator that has gotten large online, no matter what the genre, in their stories, what I've seen consistently is the ability to create consistently over a long period of time. I was just listening to a podcast yesterday, the Coach 'em Up podcast, and they were interviewing another strength and conditioning coach that I follow online. His name is Lucas Hardy. He's at Range of Strength. He's this super strong guy. He used to be a power lifter, but he has all this flexibility now. He built his flexibility, but he's still strong. So physically he's a very impressive guy. And one of the things that he said that I noted when I listened to the podcast the other day is he started posting content in 2014. Now, I didn't discover him until probably like 2023, maybe. And it may have been 2024. And so we're talking about 10 years of posting. And it seems like, 10 years of posting at this point. But, who knows when he got his first big pop? I don't know because I didn't discover him until the last year. But it was really just this. And when I listened to creators talking, he was talking about this too. He has a strategy primarily of just showing you what he's doing in his own training. It's not this, and he talks about like being uncomfortable with the camera and the microphone, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just another reminder to me, like even with content creation, like small sustainable steps done over a long period of time. And so many times I have let well-meaning people who really want me to be successful, I've let them get in my ear with these ideas about how to blow my channel up quicker and faster, and you need to be on all these platforms and you need to be posting every day and yada 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 yada, posting multiple times a day even sometimes. And it's just not sustainable. Every time I try to do that, I end up hating my life and I end up hating my presence online and I end up deleting everything. And so I'm done doing that because it doesn't work. But showing up every couple of weeks with my head clear, energized, wanting to present content to you all, like that works. That's a sustainable strategy. And so that's what I'm going to keep doing. And the chips just fall where they may. Another example, relationships. I'm not going to get too deep on this, y'all, but there's so many times where I've seen people get into a relationship and they accelerate. They've been dating a month and suddenly they're living with each other. Now they're living with each other for 2 or 3 months and now they're married. And then 2 or 3 months after that, they hate each other's guts. And the thing about it is anything, I think anything worth having takes time. And I think the irony is sometimes those people who have those fast relationships, they'll be like, that person wasn't right for me. And the reality is, or maybe y'all just ran up on each other too fast. Because when you're single, especially if you're in your 30s or something like that, you're so used to how you live probably that when you have to adjust to someone else, it's hard. And so this is why it would be advisable to just take more time. Obviously show up consistently, talk to one another on a regular basis, go on dates, et cetera, whatever. But take time to get to know one another so that you don't crash and burn, right? So again, we can live by this myth that if we just do more, the good things happen faster, which certainly isn't true. Hopefully you feel that way and agree with me at the end of this here. Or we can recognize that, okay, if stepping on the accelerator all the time is not the answer, it then behooves me to go ahead and develop some patience and develop the discipline to put in the work towards the things that I want, but have the discipline to cut that work off and allow me to recuperate so that I can come and do it again well. Remember, like I talked about with the martial arts, you show up once a week for a whole year. That's 52 times that you've trained by the end of the year. And every week, you now get a whole week in between sessions to recover. You can invest in diet. You can invest in sleep. You can get your family on board with helping you move towards this goal of becoming a better martial artist or whatever that thing is for you. But every rep done with intention counts, folks. And again, that quote, I don't know who I heard first say this, but I think it's very true. We overestimate what we can do in a year, and we underestimate what we can do in 10 years. So, like I'm always talking about, show up, do the work, but make sure you're not burning yourself down so you can show up again and again and again. This is the Most Important Skill in Life podcast. I am your host, Travis Daigle. You can follow me at Travis Daigle on YouTube, at Travis Daigle on Instagram. So make sure you're following the podcast on Spotify, the Most Important Skill in Life podcast. And make sure to go to my website, travisdaigle.com, subscribe to the email list. Remember, if you subscribe to the email list, you'll get the themes and ideas for the podcast well in advance of the podcast coming out, because all the podcasts are just, like I said today, based on articles that I've written on the website. Also on the website, make sure to go and check out my book on Amazon, Adapt and Overcome, 3 Principles to Master the Most Important Skill in Life, which is personal ownership. Folks, I'll see you all next time.